If it was a hosted rental where you lived in the property and you rented part of it out as a short-term rental, they were unregulated until now. This new law is going to take effect in December of 25. So now all short-term rentals will be regulated, and you're going to have to get a permit for them. Hey, what's happening, friends? We've done some videos lately about short-term vacation rental impacts and some updates to the laws here on the Big Island, and we had asked a lot of questions about what about the other islands, where can I find good information about all of this. And so we put together a short-term rental rules guide for all of the islands, and I'm going to run through that with you, and then I'm going to give you the opportunity, if you want, to download this guide so you have access to all this information. We put a QR code at the end, and you'll be able to do that and get this guide and see it for yourself. So let's jump right into it. So again, this is the short-term rental rules guide for 2025, and the first thing I have on here is a disclaimer, right? Because the rules are constantly changing. I'm going to explain by island what's going on and what's potentially changing, but you really want to focus in on exactly what's happening when you're looking to make a purchase. So you're operating off of the most recent rules, and make sure that you're checking with the county official websites and consulting with professionals and making sure that you know exactly what's going on, because this is entirely a fluid process, and every island kind of has a different situation that they're in terms of revising these rules or making changes to them. And most importantly, no matter what, make sure you pay your taxes, both the general excise tax and the transient accommodations tax. Regardless of the county, those taxes are in place, and you're going to have to pay those if you purchase a short-term rental. So what I'm going to do is go through island by island. There's a lot of text here. These are all linked to more information, but give you a quick overview by island of the situation with short-term rentals. So we're going to start off with Kauai, because they are by far the most stable and well-established rule set across the state. And generally, short-term rentals are limited to visitor destination areas, and then if they're outside of that, they need a non-conforming use certificate, but there aren't any new ones being issued. So pretty straightforward, and you'll see this theme across all of the islands. If you have the correct zoning, every single island calls it different things, but visitor destination areas is what Kauai calls it. You can do short-term vacation renting. You have to have that permit if you're outside of the visitor destination area, and there is an approved list that is published so you can check and see if a rental that you're staying at is legal, or if one that you're purchasing is legal. All the enforcement is done by the county, and that's the case for all of the islands. And then there's some official links here to their specific ordinance and more references about the short-term vacation rental regulations on Kauai. And then for news or potential changes, there is no discussion right now on Kauai about any changes. It's been very stable for many, many years. They were the first island actually to put rules into place, and those rules have been pretty stable since then. So not a lot of changes coming on Kauai. Moving on to the island of Oahu, coming down the island chain. So there's always some discussion about this 90-day minimum. So right now, outside of resort zoned areas, you do have a 90-day minimum. And so there's talk about changing that to 6 months. That's one of the things when we get into the news you have to consider, is there is some fluctuation. But if you're inside of the resort zone areas, you're okay. The Department of Planning and Permitting regulates this. The DPP is what it's called on Oahu, and they issue the permits. And you also have to do a disclosure form when you sell property on the island of Oahu, and that's included in all real estate contracts, so you know what the situation is with that specific property. And then we have the link here to the short-term rental site on the City and County of Honolulu website. And like I mentioned before, there's always discussion about refining the maps and changing the 2022 overhaul. So you always want to check with the DPP website and see what is changing, and then also the news on the county council, because all of this is governed by the rules that the county council makes. And so if there are changes, you'll see that definitely in the local news, but you want to check those DPP websites and make sure everything is up to date. On the island of Hawaii, I did an extensive video on this a couple of weeks ago, so you can go find that video if you want to watch it. But we had some recent changes right now. So the history of the regulation here is the first time we had any type of regulation, and I've done tons of videos on this, was in 2018. And that was the first time we had an ordinance. Before that, it was the Wild Wild West. You do whatever you wanted. And that established those short-term vacation rental rules, and then also issued non-conforming use permits, which allowed people who were renting at the time to continue to rent. But if those folks let those permits lapse, you couldn't get them back. So they basically went away and you couldn't get them back, and there's no new ones being issued. So again, there's specific zoning classifications that short-term renting is allowed in. And the big change in 2025 this year is that the previous regulation only applied to unhosted rentals. So properties that were completely rented 100%. If it was a hosted rental where you lived in the property and you rented part of it out as a short-term rental, they were unregulated until now. This new law is going to take effect in December of 25. So now all short-term rentals will be regulated and you're going to have to get a permit for them. Those permits are issued and the enforcement is done through the county planning department. And we have links on here to that website with all of the details about the regulation and the process to get a permit and all the different zoning that you need. So everything is here. And then again, like I just said, the new county rules will go into effect that passed in July of 24 are currently being implemented, and everybody needs to register before December 20th is when the actual new ordinance goes into effect. So we're currently in the middle of changes right now in the second half of 2025.
If you're looking to relocate here on the Big Island, I want to share with you a resource that we put together. Over 80 agents from my team, expert agents here on the Big Island, put together a relocation guide that will help you evaluate all of the important factors that you want to take into account before you move here to the Big Island. School districts, healthcare, employment, all of the things that you got to think about, we put into one home buyer's guide that will help you figure out what is best when you start this relocation process here to the Big Island. So if you want this guide, just click on the link below, fill out the form. We will send you the guide for free. And if you want to take the next steps and have a conversation with us, we'd be happy to help.
By far, the most unknown or volatile island for short-term rentals is Maui. If you follow any of the news, there's a lot of apprehension about what's going on in Maui. But in terms of the history and what's allowed, there's basically two kinds of permits. You can get a B&B permit where the host lives on the property, right, and rents out part of it, or you can get a short-term rental permit where the entire home is rented and it's unhosted. There are some caps and zoning limits with this, and all of this was consolidated in a 2021 ordinance. But right now, there are many condo buildings that are apartment zone that are on a thing called the Minatoya List, and this allows for short-term rentals. Now, there is a move to eliminate that and not allow short-term rentals in any of these apartment zone condominiums that are on this current Minatoya List. This is the big point of discussion. This is the piece of legislation that's currently working its way through the county council. And so it's something to stay on top of. And when this goes into effect, we don't know. There's a lot of unknowns, but it's something that definitely you want to stay informed of before you make any type of decision. All of these permits are, again, issued by the county, and we have all of the links here to their websites with all the regulations and the process on how to do that. Looking into the future, a lot of this they're talking about isn't going to take into effect until like 2028 or 2030. But again, you want to stay on top of what the rules are and what the potential changes are, because if they do change in the future, a property that you purchased today that you could vacation rent may be outlawed sometime in the future. We got quick references here to all of the main websites, so you can click on these and get more information. But the bottom line is, and the most important thing to understand with all of this, is that short-term rentals are legal where they're legal, and that's probably not going to change. Very unlikely to change. And that's the big thing to understand here, is it is still safe to buy a short-term rental in Hawaii if it's in a properly zoned vacation destination, resort zoned area. All of the islands call them different things, but if you buy a property in one of these areas, it's very unlikely that there's gonna be any changes to your ability to rent there. It's these other places where they're outside of those zoning areas, and we have these non-conforming use permits, or we have the Minatoya List. These are the areas that are at risk, and you just have to be informed about what the zoning is and what the potential changes are in the future. But I can tell you, there's plenty of vacation rental, both condominiums and properties, that are very, very safe and are not under any threat of being changed anytime in the future. And it's actually a very good time to purchase one right now because of the slow market and because of all the uncertainty and a lot of people not buying. And then, of course, said this over and over again, make sure that you get up-to-date information before you make any type of decision, and make sure that you're getting it from the source. And then, of course, always consult with a professional. That's very, very important, whether it be a realtor or a property manager or an attorney. But make sure you're getting professional advice before you make a big purchase, because you don't want to get left with a property that you can't use the way that you plan to. So hopefully this is helpful. Again, we'll drop the QR code here and the download link below if you want this guide, and it has links to all of the places that you got to go to get all the information that you need. But hopefully this is helpful, kind of rounds up what's going on with vacation rentals across the state of Hawaii. And again, it's always a great market to be in because we have a shortage of hotel rooms here, and vacation rentals always do very, very well. But there's always that unknown about regulation, and it's important to make a good decision. So if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me, Dylan at buybigisland.com, or in the description below, there's a link to my calendar. You can always click on that, go right to my calendar, and I'm happy to do a consult with you and learn more about your plans and answer any of your questions. Always appreciate you guys watching. See you guys next week. Aloha.